Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Culpeper Chamber of Commerce Town Hall. This is a third in series of 5 on hiring and interviewing with Neil Mars from Urbana Community College. Today's town hall is brought to you by Culpeper Media Network, and we would like to take an opportunity to wish the station manager, Jonathan Krawchuk, a happy birthday today. So, Jonathan, I hope you're enjoying your day, and thank you for sponsoring this town hall with Neil Mars. This is also brought to you by the Culpeper Chamber of Commerce Small Business Development Council, and we're hoping to help small businesses be able to hire and evaluate employees as we're coming out of the COVID-19 crisis. We're joined again by Neil Mars, who's currently an associate professor of business at Urbana Community College. He is the lead marketing faculty for the institution and is also the chairman of the business peer group for the Virginia Community College System. Neil has taught courses in human resources, finance, and supervision at Urbana and has been at Urbana since 2010. In addition, Neil is the president of Solutions Recruiting, an HR consulting and executive search firm he founded in 2001. He works primarily with major industrial service corporations throughout the U.S., helping them optimize their hiring processes and fill high-level and specialized positions. His prior experience includes serving as vice president of sales for RUS, a $300 million industrial services company formerly based in Culpeper, along with extensive experience with Fortune 500 companies prior. He has also been a speaker for multiple national and local programs on the subject of hiring and recruiting. Neil holds a master's degree in business from the University of Rochester, New York, and is certified in the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator System. Neil currently serves on the board of directors for Hospice of the Piedmont and is a former board president with 15 years of service. Neil, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having us, Jeff and Amy. I appreciate it. And on behalf of Urbana, I want to thank you for having us here. Really what I want to do is I want to focus on, I've focused the last few episodes on kind of an overview, and then last we talked about setting a job description. This will all build off of this. So I'm going to share my screen here, make sure I can do this correctly. Can you allow sharing of the screen, Jeff? What I'm going to do is, in a couple minutes, I'm going to show you. We're going to walk through this module. We're going to focus on how to market your position, and really, the objective is I'm going to explain in a moment, is learning how to cast your net as wide as possible. Perfect. All right, here we go. All right. So as I said, really last time, Jeff talked about my background. I won't spend a lot of time going through that again. Suffice it to say that the first half of my career, particularly with my experience at RUS, for those who may remember it here at Culpeper, in my tenure there, we went from a sales force of 75 to 150 people. You had to get good at the process of hiring, not just the transactional elements as well. And secondly, with Solutions Recruiting and HR, recruiting and consulting firm, I've probably done over 10,000 interviews. I bet I've done 20 this week. So with that said, certainly have had a lot of experience in this process. Now, what we laid out at the beginning was a 5-step process for how to improve yourself with hiring. And for whatever it's worth, for the sake of the folks watching this, this is an issue shared by big companies and small alike. This is not something unique to small business. But we identified 5 steps, and today we're really going to focus on step 2, which is marketing, and really with the ultimate output to come up with a good candidate funnel. Last time the goal was to come up with the ideal candidate profile. Today our goal is to come up with the funnel. Now, to understand what that means, I want to explain to you here that really the goal for this is to cast the net wide. So hiring is and I am fully aware of that, and I live this with my current clients right now. It is time-consuming, frustrating. It is not something that most businesses look forward to. It takes you out of your core business, doesn't generate revenue. It's difficult. It's a complicated process, and it's one, frankly, a lot of us probably avoid. But it's also possibly the most critical thing we do. I used to, back in the day, tell my people, you do a project well, it certainly helps the business. You make a good hire, you've now helped the company exponentially. So while it's a cumbersome process, it's a critical one. And really the goal is to hire not just a good person, the goal is to hire the right person. And there's a problem that we have is it will tend to hire, if you don't do this step in the process, well, the marketing process, you'll settle. You're going to hire the best person that comes through the process versus hiring the right person. Now, our definition here, as I said, is casting the net wide to create a large manageable pool of qualified prospects. Now, to describe that, I spent a lot of time thinking about this and trying to give you a good picture of what I mean. And the best way to describe it is, I remember when I was a kid, the ice cream truck would come around. I remember there was always a feeling, and you knew what you wanted. I wanted one of those toasted almonds. So you had something in mind that you really wanted to get. And there was a fear when you'd reach into your pocket, you were just hoping you had enough money on you because you didn't have time to go get it. You had to have it on you. So you'd reach in, you hoped you had the right change and enough money to be able to afford it. The goal for this is to make sure when you reach into that your pocket to hire, that you're going to be guaranteed you're going to have plenty of money. You're going to be able to find the right person and get what you want as opposed to having to wait and do it again. Now, last time, this pie chart measures engagement. And engagement, best description is people that are going to put in discretionary effort into their job. That's who you want. You want engaged people. And this says that the U.S. has done well over the past several years, probably about 35%. And that's engaged, loyal people. The other two groups, though, are disengaged people. These are the people that are either unemployed or are actively looking for a job. And passive is probably about 50% of people, a little over 50%, that they're not necessarily out there looking. They're doing their job. They're doing okay. They're not putting a ton of discretionary into work, but they're doing what they need to do. But when somebody calls, they'll listen. Now, in terms of candidates, there's a couple of groups. I want you to understand the different dimensions we're going to discuss. There's a couple of different groups of people. First of all, there are the active candidates. That's that 13% we discussed right there. These are people that are actively looking for work or they're unemployed. Those are the people looking at job boards and going out and responding to job ads. Now, the passive is this 52%. And first of all, you can see there's 3 times more of those, just about, than there are active candidates. And those numbers vary from year to year, but 2.5 to 3 times the number of people. And passive candidates, folks, are the best source of candidates for you for 2 big reasons. One is there's more of them. Simply stated, I'd rather fish in a bigger pond. So there's more passive candidates than there are active seekers. And secondly, there's going to tend to be less negativity assigned with them. If somebody's an active seeker, and we've all been active seekers, or many of us have at some point in their career, so I'm not casting aspersions on all active seekers, but there's a higher probability that those folks will be out of work because they didn't do a good job or were disgruntled or had some other type of negative connotation to them. So take out of that third list the fact that there's going to be some of them that you probably aren't going to want to hire, and that's going to tell you why passive candidates are so important. Now, you've got to go get them. They're not going to necessarily come to you. Now, the other thing in terms of companies, understand that there's a couple of different ways you can do this. There's posting versus searching. And either when you post a job, you put it up on a board someplace or you advertise in the paper, and you're waiting for somebody to respond to you. When you are doing searching, you're going out and finding them, or you're going out and actively finding them. So a passive candidate, understand, is much less likely to respond to a posting like that. And it also points out, and I'm going to reinforce this a couple of times, the importance of the first step we talked about, is the job analysis. You need to understand what the ideal candidate looks like, and so you have a pretty good idea of where they are and where you're likely to find them. Now, in terms of categories, I'm really going to say that there's marketing for candidates. There are 4 primary categories of places you could look, and I'm going to call the first one advertising. We're going to talk mostly about job boards as part of that, but certainly newspapers would be still to some parts of the market or important segment. But portion 1 is advertising. The other is social media, and I'll tell you right now, in this world, you've got to be active on social media if you're going to have a chance not just to attract customers, but to find employees. Thirdly, events, and then fourthly, what I'm going to call daily or interactive. And I'll come back to explain. You want to have a good picture in your mind of what that ideal candidate looks like, and be able to bump into them as often as you can, or have some type of interaction with them as often as possible. Now, in terms of candidates, in terms of the candidate person itself, This here, the advertising is for the most part going to attract active candidates, whereas with events, you're going to find more passive candidates. Now, there certainly is overlap in that. I mean, there's going to be cases where with Indeed, I know, for example, you can do database searches in there. You're still relying on somebody having posted in there, but you can still do them. So there is some overlap with that. In terms of the company process, I would tell you that searching is more of an active or engaged, aggressive process, whereas posting is more you're waiting for somebody to respond to you. And once again, there is overlap in these two, and which is a more aggressive process. I would tell you that social media, for example, you can do both. There are certainly lots of opportunities to post ads. Both Facebook and LinkedIn have the opportunity to post for jobs that you're looking for, but there's also a ton of search capabilities with them as well. So 4 categories of where to look, and we're going to spend a couple of minutes talking about each one now. Now, in terms of job boards, I would tell you that there's really two. This is a gross simplification, but there's 2 basic types. There are what I will call aggregators, and then there are the job boards themselves. And there's overlap between those, but an aggregator would be something like an Indeed or a ZipRecruiter. Those are people that are going out, they have some of their own site, but what they specialize in is they grab stuff from every place. So if you were on an aggregator, if you post on another site, a more niche site, you're probably getting grabbed someplace by one of these aggregators here. So those are the 2. These are higher volume, somewhat more transactional type of boards. For certain positions, they can be invaluable. As you start to move up beyond entry level, they're not as useful, but they certainly can be. But for an entry level search that you're doing to fill, they certainly can be. Those 2 can be valuable. A site like that. Those that are a little more, what I'm going to call probably a little higher end of the market, would be folks like CareerBuilder and Monster. CareerBuilder, I have a preference for CareerBuilder over Monster. I haven't posted, truthfully said, I haven't posted in a long time, but those 2 sites I have in the past are very valuable, particularly depending on the position that you're going to search. Now, somebody that's kind of in between there's a company called Glassdoor, and Glassdoor is in because they're, as I said, they're in a little different space. Glassdoor is a place where, as a candidate and as a hiring company, you can go in and you can make comments about any given company. People have learned that there's going to be, how do I want to say this, to take some of those comments with a grain of salt, but that's a place where candidates and companies can go in and look at what people are saying about working there. They have their own posting and boards as well. I'm going to put that in the middle because they fill both of those. They fill the basic needs of both. Now, in terms of, I think the aggregators tend to work best, or this process works best, with less specialized jobs and with people that are active candidates. Once again, if you've got large numbers you got to fill, particularly with those aggregators, I certainly would do that. You can both search, you can post in these, but you can also have the ability, depending on your budget and how you want to do it, you have the ability to go in and look for people as well, which is something with Indeed or ZipRecruiter I would strongly urge you to do if you have the ability. CareerBuilder and Monster don't offer that as much anymore. The newspaper can work for an older audience. Certainly would have, many of them will also have an online partner. It's not something that I think many companies rely much on anymore, but there certainly is, particularly in a community like Culpeper, going to be value at looking into something like the Star Exponent or somebody else. Now, aggregators are a little different to work with here, and understand that. Oh, and if I had, by the way, before I go on, I wanted to point out, if I had to recommend some personally, I like Indeed. I've worked with both Indeed and ZipRecruiter. I like Indeed much more. I'd be happy to share reasons why. I think it's more user-friendly, I think, than ZipRecruiter is. I have a strong preference of CareerBuilder over Monster if I'm going to go for a more professional job. And if I was advising somebody, I'd tell them to try Glassdoor. I think these are, and they're all, if you look at recent trends, they're all in the top 10 or top 15, so to speak, on numbers and activity. So I got to make a recommendation, I'd take one of those 3. Now, in terms of how aggregators work, a couple things I wanted to point out to you. And they certainly are good. There are opportunities for both aggregators and the regular boards to advertise, to just pay for a post. I'm going to put it up, and that's going to cost me so much money to do so. But with the aggregators, you all have a couple of choices. I'm not going to get into it a ton, but explain that you can set your own basically daily budget for how much you want to spend. And what it does is, if you see the one on top there, you can set a budget from what you want to spend, and it's gonna basically gauge how much take you get. So if you can set your budget higher, you're going to get more candidates. If you set it lower, you're not going to see as many. You'll end up lower on the search criteria. But there's a way to gauge it, so you can say, I'm going to set a certain budget for the day, and that's what I'm going to spend. You can also do it. There's options to do it on a pay-per-click basis, meaning I'm going to pay just for the number of views I get, or the number of responses, the number of hires. So a lot like the model Google uses to advertise on Google, you can do that with these aggregators. So it gives you the chance to kind of play around. But they also will have it at the bottom here, and it's a great tool. They'll give you a dashboard that will let you manage your openings. So particularly if you've got more than one going at any one time, that's going to be critical. Also, it's a good way if you fill a job, make sure you shut it off or don't keep it open at once you've done that, particularly if you've got multiple locations. But they've got some good tools to kind of help you manage your activity. So once again, real brief comment on aggregators. Now, the second one I will talk about is social media. And I'm going to tell you right now, before you go any further, if you're serious about hiring, you got to be on social media. I don't know how anybody can without being there. I think the big ones, and I would say the two that I use the most are LinkedIn and Facebook, are essential. You got to use them. They both will have both the ability to both post and search, and you can do both of those for free essentially on these sites. So there's paid options for both, but you can get good utility. I get good utility from LinkedIn, for example, with the free site. Now, understand how big the numbers are for these. Facebook, for example, has over 2 billion users. So that's basically about 1 in 3 person on the planet uses Facebook. That still boggles my mind, but it's true. So the numbers that you can reach for any target audience are huge with Facebook, and particularly as you move up the criteria, so to speak, on the type of position you're looking to fill, if it's a more technical or higher level search. LinkedIn, the numbers are well into the hundreds of millions. So the numbers are huge there as well. So they can do posting and searching. There's a number of advantages. First of all, during the pandemic, the usage, as high as they were before, the usage for these have gone through the roof. So people if they were using it before, they're using it a lot more now. I just saw a webinar yesterday. It showed the numbers are up 30-40%, huge. It's also going to allow you, and this is important, to set up a repeatable process that you're not necessarily going to have to pay a ton of money for. And that's the big thing. Some of the other things are transactional. You want to be able to do it over and over again. It's going to be important for the younger audience, and the way you're able to do it, you're going to have more opportunity with social media to tell your story, not just about your company, but potentially, and I'll get to this later, profile some of your current employees. So paint a picture of what current employee success looks like to attract more people. And also keep in mind that, correct or incorrect, social media tends to be viewed as less biased. So people are going to tend to be more accepting of the message when they get it on social media than they might someplace else. And each of these sites is going to give you, has different kinds of tools to use to post or to advertise a position. There's going to be a different method of communicating your story. And all of them are going to have some type of diagnostics or dashboard that you're going to be able to use to help you do that. So it's different by site. You want to spend some time getting used to this, but can't stress enough that you've got to be there in today's world if you're going to be successful attracting people, particularly younger audience. Now, events. Let's talk about this one briefly. I mean, there's a number of different ways to utilize a number of different types of events. There are going to be, these are job fairs and other types of networking events that you can go to that are focused on the hiring process. Certainly your geographic ones, local or regional. I know schools in many cases. I know the chamber does, but I know schools are going to have job fairs on a regular basis. I think they're going to be functional events that certain, either a trade association might have one or a school might have one for alumni as well as people in school than currently. I think those can be meaningful. I think there are going to be those that are sponsored, meaning a given association like the chamber or some places might have one. And I want to have you make sure that when you do these that you think broadly. When you go to these, you have to have a picture in your mind or a profile of what the ideal person would look like, to be able to, and I say look like, I mean in terms of what their background would look like, or what types of experiences that they might have had, or what their personality would be like, so you can start making those connections when you get there. Now, the last one is really probably the most unique or might be the most foreign to everybody, but it's what I'm going to call the daily interactive. It's something that I've been doing a lot for the people that are in the restaurant or retail business. They're going to be used to this. They're going to be used to having an idea of what the ideal profile looks like to be able to go in and find them. And that's, starting with a job analysis. You want to start with what somebody that's going to be successful in this case, what you need them to do, so you'll know when you see them, be able to describe that ideal candidate and be able to share it in a sentence. The ideal person is going to be somebody that fits this. And then what you want to do is put yourself in a position where you're bumping into these people often. Now, what I'm talking about is, and the reason that's important, and the first one we're going to talk about is employee referrals. If you don't have an employee referral program, get one this afternoon. That is the number one, if you look at that chart on the right-hand side from LinkedIn, that's the number one way companies hire. There is not a better source of hiring than having something that your employees are referring people to. Because first of all, it shows that they love the job. And secondly, it's somebody that has a connection with them and can vouch for people. There's 100 reasons why, but if you don't have an employee referral program, you need to get one. Also tell you some other people or places you might be able to bump into folks when you're dealing with vendors or even customers in some cases. You could be bumping into potential employees. Certainly professional associations you belong to. Your industry may have periodic educational events. Fabulous place for networking. Incredibly good place for networking, both short and long term. And I know the chamber does lots of that too. So the chamber is designed to help you with things like that. So keep in mind that these are what you want to basically doing. There's some overlap with events here, but you want to be doing things where you are bumping into people that could fit your jobs on a regular basis. So some examples. If you said, for example, in this case, that college students, you want to hire college students graduating, certainly contacts with local faculty like myself, the Career Center. And I set up a program for a major national environmental company where I was dealing with the Career Center people. Most, particularly the 2-year schools, I can tell you, have career events a couple times a year. So you want to be talking, are you talking to the Career Center? Are you going to school events? Are you hiring interns? There's all these things are going to put you kind of on a day-to-day basis, are going to put you in a position where you're going to be bumping into people if it's college students you're looking for on a regular basis. Now, let's say it's different. Let's say it's more, I'm going to say a professional person, an engineer. Let's say you're looking for engineers. It could be things like, do you belong to industry organizations? Do you go to trade shows? Do you go to educational opportunities? Even like a webinar can be a place at times to meet people, but particularly live events. So what are you doing to go places kind of in the course of your daily or weekly work where you're going to bump into people that might be candidates for you? What if you work in a retail? What can you do at retail? You can't do it. Sure you can. Are you going to local events? Are you going to the gnarly hops? Are you going to kids, the kids sports? I coached my daughter's soccer team for 8 years. I mean, are you participating in kids sports? Are you talking to your customers when they come in and telling them about making them feel good about it? So those are things, once again, in the course of your daily life and work, are you doing things to bump into it? And if you need somebody with a particular type of product knowledge, of somebody that knows how to have a computer programming, whatever it is, are you doing things? Are you talking to your vendors? Are you talking to even online communities? Are you interacting with people that are enthusiasts of that particular skill or product that you are? And are you joining webinars? So I'm saying that these are all things that you can do on this page if these are your profile, to bump into these people on a regular basis. Now, to summarize here, we're just about done with the marketing seminar. Just kind of summarize what we talked about. There are 4 basic categories. And there's a little overlap with these, but 4 basic categories. There's advertising, which is mostly the job boards, social media, events, and what I'll call daily interactive. Really, I'd suggest you focus on passive candidates and making sure that you're having outreach to those passive candidates for no other reason than there's a lot more of them. You are limiting yourself pure numbers if you don't. You want to make sure that you're being more aggressive about it. Posting is fine, but that is a passive process. Passive candidates are good. Passive posting is not as good in this case. So understand that you want to be going out looking for people as much as you can versus just posting something. And I can't stress enough how important it is to know have a profile of the person you're looking for, and it's to understand that this is the kind of personality that you're like. And the best way I can describe that is I always talk about a resonance. And if you take a tuning fork and you hit it on a table, it's going to make a sound. What you're doing is you want to understand the resonance of your job. So you want to understand what the good employees sound like and what they do. So when you run into somebody, you can hear that resonance in them. Okay? Now, some ideas. I'm going to finish up with some ideas to give some specific ideas. First of all, if you don't have an employee referral program, get one today, this afternoon. Find a way to get your employees out there looking to help you fill positions. I think it's really helpful, an idea that I would advise anybody, understand the ideal profile and try to think of 3 places where you might bump into them. And this is a fluid process, but be able to sit down with your employees and be able to list them. Okay, you, and you, you're great employees. Tell me about some of the things, your hobbies, some of the things you do. I would also think you might want to have a somewhat, depending on the level of position. If I'm hiring a manager, might use a different plan than a frontline employee. I would definitely, with the boards, I would definitely do both search and post. I'm not a fan of Monster. I know some people have had success with it. Those are the sites that I'd focus on if I was doing it. I would also make sure that I knew, how to work their diagnostics and be able to measure and track your success and keep an eye on it. And last but not least, buyer beware. Be very careful that particularly a couple of them. I had some experiences with one of the aggregators. I'll just leave it at that. I'll tell you, I had an experience with ZipRecruiter with a client of mine where they were grossly overcharging them for things because they hadn't, part of it because they hadn't shut the right parts of it off and left it run. So you've got to be careful, and you've got to keep an eye on what you're doing with boards and things like that. Got to get on social media. Every platform is going to have a kind of a unique rules of engagement. Make sure that you're comfortable with yours. If you're going to pick 2, you're not going to lose with Facebook and LinkedIn. You got to be fairly regular with it. You can't. It's not something that you're going to. If you post once a month is going to have much impact for you. You got to do weekly, maybe daily. And if you've used 2 platforms, try another one. The numbers are all up. I think it's worthwhile to take another one. And lastly, I would encourage everybody, even a small business, to find a social media manager. And that could be your child. That could be a customer, somebody's, a spouse, somebody that is going to focus on that. And it's really, they don't necessarily have to spend a ton of time, but really finding somebody that knows Facebook or Twitter, whatever you're going to use, I think it's really valuable. I said, I don't think it costs you a lot of money, but to find somebody that's going to focus on it, it's going to be, managing, getting content up on a regular basis. And there's ways to do that from an automated standpoint, but we'll spend time talking about that as well. But find somebody that's doing it, somebody that's assigned to it. I also think as you're identifying the ideal candidate, I think a great thing for employees to do, particularly companies to do, a local company, is feature your employees. Here's an ideal candidate, because what you want to do is say, and it could be people of all different types of backgrounds, and most certainly probably will be people of all different types of backgrounds, but wow, look, they're being really successful or happy doing this. That could be me. So I think that's a real valuable exercise as well. I'd have a weekly goal for all of this activity as well. And last but not least, if you bump into people, you go someplace, I keep a database of prospects, even if it's somebody that might be years from now that you deal with. Have a card file, have an Outlook contact database, whatever it is, but keep a list of people that you want to speak to. All right? With that said, that's all I have. If anybody's got any questions on that, I'll end the share right here now. If anybody's got any questions on any of that information, just get a hold of Jeff. You got my contact information. Be happy to answer it for you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. And we certainly appreciate it. Great information. And one question that I might have is you mentioned the employee referral program. Is that an incentive program where an employee gets a reward if they recommend somebody as a pay boost? What does that look like?
Typically speaking, that's something like an phrase. But if I hire somebody that you referred, you get you get a bonus of some type. I've seen people do, you get $100. I've seen people do 100 or 1,000 bucks. I mean, I've seen all of it depending on the level of position, the amount of pay. I've seen people says it gets you something like a vacation day, or a couple of vacation days if you refer somebody. I've seen people have, hey, listen, if you refer somebody, I'll give you $100 now and $100 when they've been here for a year, or amounts that are more. So it can take on any one of a number of different dimensions. But yeah, it's a if you're going to pay for the ad, why wouldn't you pay your employees?
No, I think that's a great point and a great idea. Once again, Neil Mars from Germanna Community College, and thank you so much for joining us here today on our town hall on hiring and interviewing coming out of COVID-19, sponsored by Culpeper Media Network. We're going to have another one with Neil coming up here soon, and we'll keep everybody posted on that. Until then, thank you so much for joining us here today at the Culpeper Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Jeff.